Hey everybody, it's Joe. This week we'll be doing a deck profile for Magic instead of anything else. I've been toying around with the new Fate Reforged cards and found that Jeskai is probably the way I want to go. Though my build's not the one that everyone's hyping up with Monastery Mentor and all that sort of thing, so I'm not playing the token build, I'm playing a more tempo-y build that I actually found on Reddit under R Spikes. You should check it out, it's really good if you're wanting to build new competitive things. I tweaked the build that they had ever so slightly, and I've been enjoying the testing I've had with it. So yeah, so I'll show you what I've got and see if you like it. Right, so we'll still start with the land base, which is fairly basic, for a deck of today's standards. So I'm playing 2 of each basic. The Pain lands I'm running 2 Shivan Reef and 3 Battlefield Forge. Go through this nice and quick. 3 Temple of Triumph, 3 Temple of Enlightenment, 3 Flooded Strand, and although I've found, due to my poor, horrendous luck, that Flooded Strand tends not to work half the time because I've already drawn all 4 of my basics that can fetch before I draw them. And then finally a playset of Mystic Monastery, because you can't really run a tricoloured deck these days without this sort of thing. Then going from CMC order up, I'm playing 3 copies of Wild Slash, which I've found put in so much work. New card, really, really good. It's preferable to Magma Spray because obviously it hits players rather than just creatures. The Ferocious trigger is generally not particularly relevant. It doesn't really matter. It's a shock at the end of the day that can have an extra plus. And weirdly, in my meta, Deflecting Palm is really popular. So hey, it can get around that. Past that, it's then my 2 drops where I'm running 2 copies of Soulfire Grandmaster. I think 2 is the sweet spot. This card's been really hyped when along with Monastery Mentor during the preview sessions, but it is really good. There's just no 2 ways about it. Having your Lightning Strikes become Lightning Helixes and your Wild Slashes gain you 2, your Stoke the Flames getting really quite powerful, not that they weren't powerful enough already. In the late game as well, you often find that you only want to play this when you have something else to play with it. Being able to Stoke the Flames multiple times is really quite powerful. 4 copies of Lightning Strike because, well, it's a deck that's got red in it. It should probably be running some form of burn. It's just fairly solid. It's not Lightning Bolt, but it will do. 2 copies of Valorous Stance. Now, this is one of my favourite new cards from Fate Reforged. It's just so versatile. The amount of times you can destroy a Siege Rhino or something that a Whip brought back, possibly. Tasigur is a new card that a lot of people are playing that that can get around, I believe. And being able to save your own guys at the same time is pretty awesome. 2 copies of Seeker of the Way. Now, I was running more of this originally, but I took them down to cater for the Soulfire Masters. I think 2 and 2 is fine, though if I were to take anything out of here, a 3rd copy of Seeker would probably be the first thing that went in. There's enough prowess support in here that you can trigger his lifelink well enough, but not quite so much that you can capitalise on Monastery Mentor. So I don't run him. I do, however, run something very similar to him in Bramaz. Now, Bramaz is awesome. I've loved this card since Born of the Gods came out. It gels very, very well with one of the later cards in the deck, and it's very potent with things like Stoke the Flames. You can convoke it. It won't pay for the red, but it'll do. And it's just a nice token generator. There's just nothing bad about the card. And speaking of token generating, you've got 4 Goblin Rabble Master, because this card is just mental. Swinging for 1 when he's there, on the haste, and then swinging for 6 the next turn before you've made any other plays is just wrong. 2 copies of Jeskai Charm. I think, again, 2 is a sweet spot here, because I felt that when I was playing 3, it was the first thing I wanted to take out, and I ended up taking it out for a 2nd copy of Valorous Stance, because I was only running 1. But Valorous Stance is just as versatile as Jeskai Charm is, or the modes to it are a lot more relevant. or so I found. 4 copies of Mantis Rider, because I mean I love this card. It's just such cool value. You just, you know, whacking that down before you whack down a Rabble Master just provides like a big body shield that you could go, right, well, if you know, it puts you on a clock, you have to deal with this before you start dealing with anything else. So that's very, very good. 4 copies of Stoke the Flames, because, again, playing red, probably should be running Stoke the Flames, because it's just that good with Rabble Master and Bramaz. With Soulfire Grandmaster, you often find you can use it multiple times in order to deal exponential amounts of damage to them. My MVP for the deck, actually, is this guy, Shaman of the Great Hunt. I think this guy's amazing. I would probably like to put a third one in, but that's probably me being biased. I think 2 probably is the right number. But he's half the reason I'm running Bramaz and not Monastery Mentor, because I think the 2 gel together far, far better. Having a mentor, you need 2 non-creature spells or a creature spell and for him to hit in order for you to get the buff, whereas Bramaz, having vigilance and being able to tap for Stoke the Flames after attacking, you know, the synergy just seems to work that much nicer. The draw on Shaman is invaluable. You find yourself just outplussing so many other decks just due to this guy, and I would love to get more copies. These unfortunately are actually borrowed, so I would like to get some copies of my own. Then in the 5-drop slot we have 2 Stormbreath Dragons, because he just, you know, he can pull games out of nowhere. He's just such a shotgun card, and the protection from white is quite relevant these days, especially when you've got cards like Mentor and Soulfire Master being so hyped that you end up with some form of Jeskai deck or Mardu deck, or there's going to be some sort of, you know, white prevalence in the meta. So Stormbreath Dragon is definitely worthwhile, and 1 copy of Sarkhan the Dragon Speaker. The main reason I run Sarkhan is because of Hornet Queen. You can plus him and attack with him quite freely, and eventually they will have to block him. You know, they can't just leave him alone. Or they have to either send their Hornets to kill him, which leaves them open for you to then attack them, or you just sit there and ping some of their guys. The Minus gets rid of causes, which is always a good plan, and he's just a solid walker. There's nothing bad about him, really. And then, lastly, 2 copies of Dig Through Time, because, you know, being able to use your dead cards to plus is always pleasant. My sideboard, I've put in 2 copies of Erase, because it's just so relevant right now. There's so many enchantments you want to be getting rid of. Whip of Erebos, Causer of Krufix, Chain to the Rogs. If your opponent is running Chain to the Rogs, you side this in straight away. 3 copies of Disdainful Stroke and a Negate, because Siege Rhino is always going to be a problem, so this thing, well, these 3 will deal with this very, very nicely, and Negate will, you know, deal with most other things. If you're trying to go for a, you know, slow your deck down and have a bit more control, then it's probably a good idea to side that in. Disdainful Stroke also counts as Whip, which is also nice, because you do not want them having lifelink if you can help it. 2 copies of Anger of the Gods. You'd think Anger of the Gods would be counterproductive in this deck due to running things like Rabble Master, etc. But you often find that you can stabilise much, much faster than your opponent can, especially if you have Bramaz on board. And, you know, another reason why I would run Bramaz over certain other cards. But Anger, it's also a very, very good card against any whip strategies. You know, they play Hornet Queen, you Anger of the Gods, they cry. 1 copy of Keranos. Keranos is just a solid card. If your opponent has no way of getting around him, or hasn't sided in Erases because, well, there's no enchantments in the main deck, then you side this guy in. He just puts your opponent on such a clock. He's actually very strong. And plus I have a nice shiny copy of him, so I want to run him. 1 copy of Elspeth's Sun's Champion. Again, if you're going in for the control sort of board, then you'd probably want to be siding this in along with your Anger, as well as probably a copy of End Hostilities, so you can stabilise the board long enough for you to stabilise with Stormbreath Dragons, Elspeth, Sarkhan, all of your bigger plays. Speaking of Sarkin, there is one more copy of him in the sideboard in case of things like Causa. You know, if you feel that you need the extra burn, that Stoke isn't quite enough to deal with the opponent's Causas and things like that, then side in another Sarkin. One copy of Challenger Pyromaster. She's very, very good for the grind game for her 0, and if you're against a token heavy deck, her plus can save you. She's just solid. And then 2 more copies of Valorous Stance, because if your opponent is if you're playing against something like Abzan mid-range that's just trying to sort of bitch over your guys as consistently as possible, then you're going to want to be able to save them as often as possible. And particularly Abzan, because destroying Siege Rhinos is such a big deal, you'd probably want 4 copies of Valorous Stance in rather than 2. And yeah, that's everything. I've found that Ascendancy is quite a favourable matchup for this deck. I've not played many whip strategies yet, but I'd like to try and to do some more testing with those. Abzan is quite even so far, although I've only had 2 people playing with me. Boros aggro, you know, heavy aggro, you do need to sort of side accordingly for that. You know, you need to be able to save your guys more often. I would, you know, side in your Chandra, possibly your Valorous Stances, just so that you can go, okay, I take 1 from the Rabble Master, but then kill him the next time he tries to go for me. But yeah, past that, I mean, see what you think. Like, subscribe and share. You know how it all goes by now. And hopefully I will see you guys later.